if the world is more nonlinear, then you need to activate exponential imagination because things are moving so fast that we have to get incredibly creative to even feel tapped into what's coming. And that's really requires some collective intelligence and dialogue and wisdom circles like Sangha, where we can really hear each other deeply and slow down enough to be receiving information and sort of that gut sense that you can't get at the speed of the velocity at which we're moving. So I think that nonlinearity requires a different pace of wisdom activation.
Welcome to Inside the Circle, a series of conversations from Sangha. We sit down with our members and together we explore the practice of living fully in the modern world while staying connected to something deeper within. Through community, shared inquiry, and inner work, Sangha is an exploration into what becomes possible when we walk that path together in fellowship. The practice of living in the world but not being fully of it. To learn more about Sangha and our growing network of circles around the world, visit www.sangha.one. And welcome to this conversation with Amy Fox. Amy is the co-founder and CEO of Mobius Executive Leadership, a global transformational leadership firm. For over 20 years, she's advised senior leaders in eminent professional service firms and Fortune 500 companies on leadership and culture change. In 2026, she co-authored Leading in Chaos with Nicholas Jani and is widely regarded as an expert in vertical development and trauma-informed work in organizations. And it's such a gift to be together, Amy. Thank you for dropping in today.
My total joy, Ian, really.
So one of the ways we've been sparking these dialogues at the beginning is really around the core exploration of Sangha itself, which is a journey of discovery into that Sanskrit vibration, which can be translated as like-minded community. And so I would love to start there and really get a sense of what Sangha means to you, what enlivens in you when you are in that vibration.
Such a beautiful question. I mean, I think the most important word you used already in the introduction, which is a sense of spiritual fellowship. So many of us live in too much isolation and loneliness and don't really know where we can take our deepest inquiries, where we can be polished and refined and developed, where we can find a sense of community and intimacy and solidarity in a society that puts such a primacy on self-reliance and autonomy. So Sangha for me is the beautiful notion that we develop in relation, that we polish each other, that we mature in a much more expedited way when we are in dialogue with other fellow seekers, other people on the path, other people who are trying to live a purposeful life, make a really meaningful contribution to society. And many, many different practices suggest that there are the teachings and the teacher, but that equally important to both of those is the spiritual friendship of being accompanied by like-minded friends. And in my own life, it's been an absolutely essential part of my work. You know, Mobius's work is really to restore the fabric of corporate intimacy and to help business leaders create more love, more solidarity, more mutuality, more generosity inside of companies, but equally in the different sanghas that I participate in, including Sangha. I have the wonderful chance to really understand what the gift is when people know what's happening in your interiority, when they take the time to understand what your hurts are, what your fears are, what your longings are, what your potential is. And they become active partners in unfolding all of that and reconciling all of that. In my own life, it's been a tremendous gift. And if I didn't have that sense of belonging, I really don't think I could be as joyous a person as I am.
Wonderful. Yeah, the idea of these different sanghas that we're in that are really microcosms for this bigger sangha that we're in on earth.
That's a beautiful thing to say. That's right.
Yeah, but there was one Sangha that you mentioned there with relation to your work in Mobius of the corporate intimacy, which I feel like some people may find those two as oxymorons. And so I'd love to explore that, right? Like the company as a Sangha, and even that, as I've been sitting with that word, company, like in company. And so, yeah, how corporate, how you work with corporate intimacy and kind of bridge the gap between two things that may, for many people, seem almost contradictory.
Yeah, I think you're right. It has been an antithetical idea to imagine that there could be real friendship, real care, real nurturing in the workplace. We've sort of bifurcated the personal and the professional historically. We have a very technical model of the workplace. But over the last 20 years, I've had the privilege of working with organizations that want to soften that hard boundary and invite executives into a greater sense of familiarity with each other's life, circumstances, their lineages, their ancestry, the things that trigger them and make them reactive and de-skill them in a way to not only create more loving workplaces, but to help people stay in a productive state of mind more of the time, especially as stress goes up and the demand for change goes up. We notice that people are much more likely to get anxious in the workplace, and that level of low grade fear is a derailer to adaptation, to innovation, to psychological safety, to teaming, to many of the most essential cultural pillars that organizations need now. So they're starting to understand the need for vertical development, which you referenced in my introduction, which is really about deeper shadow work and also helping people connect to a more profound sense of purpose and service. Very much what I think people are looking to Sangha to have as well.
Yeah, and when you work with these organizations, you mentioned productivity, and is that is that one of the drivers or entry points, like kind of to enhance the business functioning, or can this kind of exist for its own sake? What's been kind of your experience with the rationale behind the work?
I think for the corporation as the client, knowing that it's relevant to business performance and to the aspiration level of the organization is important. But for the individual executives or the individual leaders, the choice to step in and offer their vulnerability or their authenticity or their to grant their trust to other colleagues or other peers, that's a very personal choice that has an intrinsic motivation, I think, of healing, of self awareness, of degrees of freedom afterwards. I think many leadership programs, the vector has gone from being just very cognitive and behavioral to starting to look at mindsets or frames or paradigms, again, fairly intellectual, to now, I think, understanding the need to do much deeper inner work in order to meet this moment, which is highly chaotic and demanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of curious. I mean, we've dropped in together many times. Yeah, we've been deeper on this, but I was curious about like the entry points and whether in the beginning of your work it was more kind of sneaking in some of this stuff, and now if you've noticed more of an openness from the beginning for that to be kind of from the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, you could say in one sense, yes, the answer is it used to be more of a Trojan horse strategy where you were kind of sneaking it in under the radar and maybe hoping people didn't notice how deep the thing was going. But I also think as practitioners, as a community of practice, there are 200 coaches and facilitators and expressive artists and therapists in Mobius, and we've been on our own healing journey as a collective. So I think our presence can hold and support more deep work. So it's not just that the market has gotten more open and receptive to these ideas and to the imperative of inner evolution. But I think our own maturity creates a different invitation now. So I think both are true. That I think there's more readiness, there's more understanding of the profundity of what's possible and what that will mean for people, not just for their work life, but for their family life and for their health and for their mental health and it's many things. benefit from this kind of inner exploration and from this fellowship that we've been pointing at. But I think also an organization that's doing this kind of work, if it's walking its talk, it should get more skillful over time.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. Yeah, and you mentioned chaos, and of course, the title of your most recent book is "Leading in Chaos," and so I'd love to kind of go there as well. Um, what are the core kind of tenets that you explore in that title?
Yeah, so we talk about there really being two pillars of transformational work that is required now. One, a path of healing or restoration, what we've been discussing up till now, and one, a path of awakening or consciousness evolution to really cultivate in yourself sort of suspension of your ego, of your self orientation, of your insecurities and ambition in the service of really being in a more unitive mindset or a more surrendered capacity to be guided and to be led and to offer yourself as an instrument of the future. So those are the sort of pillars. I think one of the reasons that this is so necessary and why I think the work that we're doing at Sangha is so vital in society at this moment is sometimes called chaotic, but it's also referred to with the acronym BANI. So let me just take each of those letters for a moment. If the world is more brittle, by which we can see systems and structures sort of disintegrating around us, the things we count on to feel secure that tomorrow is going to look a lot like today are shifting instantaneously and cathartically, catalytically. So then you have to start to really get grounding, not from external reference, but from your internal principles and values and your own deepening of faith. If the level of anxiety is going up, then you need skills for relational repair and co-regulation, and you need to be sort of soothing yourself sort of psychologically by your connection and interdependence with other people. If the world is more nonlinear, then you need to activate exponential imagination because things are moving so fast that we have to get incredibly creative to even feel tapped into what's coming. And that's really requires some collective intelligence and dialogue and wisdom circles like Sangha, where we can really hear each other deeply and slow down enough to be receiving information and sort of that gut sense that you can't get at the speed of the velocity at which we're moving. So I think that nonlinearity requires a different pace of wisdom activation. And then finally, if the world is more incomprehensible, we have to learn to befriend the mystery. In many ways, this time is asking us to get to know spirit and soul at a whole other level, which I find very, very touching, actually.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, so much to unpack in that. One of the things that stood out was this idea of speed and how, I think most projects or ventures, particularly, in my background in startup life, it's a virtue, speed. Um, and I know from reading the book, there's a different perspective you share on speed, which you even, referenced there in your answer of um, being in a nonlinear place, how we receive information, and then speed to act. So I think, for a lot of the founders that may be listening to this, it'd be worth unpacking that a little more.
Well, I happen to know that you are a student of the Japanese tea ceremony, and um, that's a beautiful example of a ritual and a practice that is, at least in part, intended to operate at a very different rhythm and a very different movement, or it's not just fluidity, it's like a different grace. And I had this beautiful opportunity to go to a planetarium and see qualia. A friend of mine has made this beautiful movie about the five elements, and watching nature move in this languid, orchestrated, implicate order that moves very slowly. It just reminds us of the not just the pace but the busyness, the amount of information that we're stuffing into a day, and the amount of activity and the amount of intellectual processing. And my own belief is that we're moving at a velocity that's antithetical to life. It helps us to numb ourselves. And when we're numb, we can hurt things that are really sanctified and that really matter. When your heart is open, you won't harm things that matter to you because you'll feel the pain of doing that inside yourself and in the people that you're doing violence to. So I think one of the ways to unwind the social structures that are out of order right now is to take time to be contemplative, take time to really listen to each other, take time to just be in null space where in that void, the hall of possibility starts to reveal itself. We have to get more revelation ready if we want to meet the future with creativity and vitality and true spark of innovation and imagination. Um, I recently did a talk on the book at a high-tech company, and one of the things I said is one shouldn't start a meeting without 2 minutes of silence. And in the Q&A, somebody raised their hand and they said, "That's a lovely idea, Amy, but we don't have 2 minutes to stop and be silent." And my heart sort of sunk, and I thought, we're measuring the cost of that 2 minutes against short-term loss, as opposed to considering the long-term implications if we make all our decisions from pressure, from anxiety, from reactivity, from desperation, from a lack of security and safety. So I think as a universe, we need to understand why there are practices of self-reflection, why there are practices of mindfulness, why are there practices of ceremonial consecrated time. It's because that's where something higher can come in.
Mm. Yeah, and then that links to your, the final point in that framework you shared around befriending the mystery, right? And how do we um, get comfortable with the unknown? Because and one of my teachers shares that the unknown is the great beloved.
I love that. That's beautiful.
But it can be hard to really embrace that sometimes. And so there's the reality, which I think, on a very micro level was showing up in that talk with, oh, we don't have 2 minutes to even um, be in that place of receptivity to the greater unknown or great mystery.
Yeah, I think also, in historically in business particularly, we've rewarded people for their expertise and their sort of command and control mentality that they know where we're going, they know how we're going to get there, and the basic task is to direct other people to move. This is not that time. This is a time where people are, in order to manage the magnitude of adaptation that is currently asked of us, we are going to have to be willing to step to the threshold of the unknown, exactly as you said it, and to see that as the beloved, to court it, to let it whisper to us, let it inform us. It's more of a passive receptivity and a deep attunement to other people, so that together we walk into the future. I mean, that is really why Sangha, to go back to your original question, is so vital now. I mean, it always was for the purpose of community and collectivity, but now it's just essential for reconnaissance. We need other people even to know what's going on, let alone what to do about it.
Totally. Well, as we come towards the end of our time together, we've been honoring the spirit of emergence, the spirit of unknown, great beloved, in drawing a card for the last question. So even I don't know what direction we're going to go. So let's see what emerges. Okay. What fuels you? What gets you going? What keeps you going?
Mm. It's a beautiful question. I would say two things. Love is the first. I feel a great blessing in my life, a grace to be here at this time where it's such an inflection point in humanity, and the choices we each make are going to have such an influence for many generations beyond us. So there's a kind of outpouring of my heart that fuels me to keep going and try to attune to what's the biggest difference I can make, the most significant, unique difference I can make. So that's part of it. And I think just what you started us with, the sense of tribe and the sense that many, many people are caring for this restorative possibility that is before us. And I feel very much a part of the fabric of life in that sense, and gratefully so.
Well said. Yeah, love, tribe. And I think for me, one other aspect is around being in this dance with creative force and like allowing that to flow through it, becoming a better uh, instrument for that. Like I feel that aliveness as well in like what you were sharing.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful.
Well, Amy, it's been a real pleasure to drop in together.
Me
Thank
too. Thank you. Thank you very much.
you. All right. Thank you for listening to Inside the Circle from Sangha. If this dialogue resonated with you, we would love to hear from you. We invite you to learn more about Sangha, our upcoming circles and events at www.sangha.one.